Hey everyone, welcome to Gaming the Alphabet, where each time I play a game according to the next letter in the alphabet. This is the first episode of the series, so I'm still going to be working out some of the issues, but for the most part, this is going to be a far more informal type of video, so my train of thought might be a little bit all over the place throughout the video. Way less structure when compared to a proper review. And with that being said, let's go right into the rules for the show, because nothing says less structure like rules. Each episode, I'm going to play a game from my backlog that starts with the next letter of the alphabet. I'm not going to count the as part of the title, otherwise, way too many games would start with the letter T. I'm not going to count corporation names as part of the titles, so things like Marvel, Disney, Nickelodeon, all of those won't count. I just feel like the or corporation names kind of defeats the spirit of what I'm trying to do. I'm going to try to choose games under 10 hours on how long to beat. These are not going to be proper reviews, no scores, nothing like that, just my thoughts about the games. And you may or may not hear a snoring dog in the background. With that, let's get started. For the inaugural game, I decided to check out Assault Android Cactus, and I played it on the Xbox Series X. This is actually a game I claimed as the free game of the month because of Xbox Live Gold way back in the day, and has just been sitting in my digital games library waiting for me to give it a try. The game is a twin stick shooter, and honestly, one that I felt was relatively easy. That's not to say I didn't die at all. I did, but the vast majority of the levels I beat the first time through. Although, because it felt easy, it actually made me feel pretty powerful when getting kill combos of up to 100. Basically, every level is just survive the round and kill the enemies. It's a rather simple concept, but sometimes that's just what video games need to be simple and fun. It made for a good game to play when I was listening to a podcast after work or when I didn't want anything too heavy in terms of tension or storytelling. I could read the small amount of dialogue and kind of just turn off my brain and play on autopilot. Now, you can make the game more challenging by trying to achieve a higher ranking on every level, and that'll give the game a bit more replayability, but I haven't really felt the urge to try and do that for every single level. Throughout the game, you'll unlock more characters, and each one has their own set of weapons, a primary and a secondary. From shotguns and rockets to lasers and magma, there was a decent amount of variety, and they all worked pretty well. But sometimes you just want to take out the flamethrower and act like Hank Scorpio for a short period at a time. Of course, I did try every character a few times, but there were definitely some characters that I preferred to play as. Although it did actually work out that some were better for general levels and others were actually better against the bosses. And it was actually good how easy you could change characters. You could change characters between every level if you wanted, and it wouldn't change the progress you were making. So that did help prevent the game from feeling stale. You'll also need to grab all the power-ups that get dropped throughout the levels. Added firepower always seemed like the best one to get, although moving faster could be good for getting out of harm's way, and freezing the enemies in place will always make things easier. And you can actually control which ones you get and when, because when they're dropped onto the battlefield, they'll actually slowly cycle through each one. So if you see one on the floor that you actually don't want, you can avoid it until it changes to whatever power-up you're looking for. It actually helps give the game a bit of bonus strategy, but honestly for me, I basically just always picked it up whenever I could, and whatever it happened to be at the time is what I used. There was always so much happening on the screen that whenever I saw one, pure instinct just took over and I would naturally go and grab whatever it was. The game was actually a little unique in terms of you don't really die. You just get knocked down and you have to mash a button to stand back up and continue fighting. That's not to say you can't die, but it won't be from enemy attacks. It'll be because your battery runs out. The same way as picking up the power ups, you'll need to pick up the batteries that get dropped throughout the levels. I thought this was pretty interesting. It was a nice change of pace from most games, although you obviously don't want to get knocked down since your battery will keep draining. The more times you get knocked down, the less enemies you kill in the same amount of time, the less likely you'll get the battery drops whenever you need it, leading to you dying. I think it was a pretty good mechanic that definitely helped the game stand out a bit and made for some frantic moments trying to stand back up and grab that battery before time runs out. The boss fights were pretty good. Basically, they all had multiple stages with different attack patterns. If you could learn the pattern, they could be pretty simple, especially with the right character. Some secondary weapons could deal massive damage in an instant, which could make some boss fights go pretty quickly. While some boss fights were unique in their own way, they all definitely followed a similar formula. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. Sticking to a formula is a great way to keep the player from getting frustrated. The secondary weapons were used instantly whenever you switched them, and they had a cooldown you would have to wait for. And some of them, like the cannonball, if you missed it, it just felt like a big waste of time. Obviously, that's part of the risk reward because the cannonball could do massive damage. As you unlock more characters, the more creative the weapons became. You start off with characters that can use an assault rifle or shotgun, and eventually unlock characters with things like singularity or propeller mine. You're going to unlock characters most of the way through the game, so you'll either need to replay earlier levels or try some of the other modes if you really want to make use of the new characters. As for the other modes, the game includes a boss rush mode and infinity drive, which is basically just endless waves of enemies. As far as I know, you actually can beat it. It's actually not endless, but I definitely never beat it. It got pretty difficult pretty quickly, actually, so if you're looking for a more challenging aspect to the game, this is probably it. Boss Rush is exactly what it sounds like. You pick one character and try to take out every boss in the game one directly after the other. The game actually has a ton of polish to it. I don't recall experiencing any issues. No glitches, no lag, no frame drops, nothing. Considering the amount of enemies and bullets that can appear on screen at once, it's great that I had absolutely no issues. I also appreciated the game's visuals. There was a ton going on visually in most of the levels, but you could basically always tell what was happening and where the bullets were coming from. There was always a ton of bright and flashing colors on screen, and yet it was always clear what was happening. The actual levels themselves were simplistic in terms of design, although oftentimes they did have moving elements to them, slightly changing the layout of the level. There is also a multiplayer mode, which I didn't try, but I can imagine just how ridiculously busy the screen would look with multiple people playing at once. I was actually surprised the game had voice acting. I'm not sure why, I just wasn't really expecting it, although it wasn't a ton. Basically, at the beginning of the game and before boss fights, and if I remember correctly, only when you're playing as the main character, Cactus. I'm pretty sure if you start a boss fight with any other character, it'll just be dialogue boxes. I played the base version on Xbox, although from what I can tell, it's also on PlayStation. But it looks like there's also an enhanced version on the Nintendo Switch if that's where you prefer to play. Either way, if you want to check out the game, there seems to be a lot of options out there for you. Honestly, the game is pretty great. A little repetitive, but if you're looking for something kind of mindless where you can listen to a podcast on your phone and play on the TV, then this is a great choice. I can see myself returning to the game every once in a while when I just want some mindless fun, because that's what this game is. It's not trying to be a cinematic masterpiece or anything like that, which sometimes that's all I want from my video games. Just be fun. And that'll do it for the very first episode of Gaming the Alphabet. I hope you enjoyed the new style. Personally, I feel like I can talk a little bit more freely. Honestly, I have a ton of smaller games like this in my backlog, and I think working my way through the alphabet will help me narrow down what to choose to play. Usually, I just get stuck not knowing what to choose and end up wasting a ton of time looking at my games list instead of playing something. As for my actual reviews of games, they aren't going anywhere, but I think this is a nice complement to those more structured style of videos. Hopefully, you think so as well. As for the next letter in the alphabet, B, I've just started playing Bleed 2, so be sure to subscribe to get that video whenever it comes out. Thanks for watching.